Welcome to 72-hour global news. The escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah has reached a critical point, threatening to drag Lebanon into a wider regional crisis. Following Hezbollah rocket attacks on the Golan Heights that caused civilian casualties, Israel's military response intensified and targeted Hezbollah positions in southern Lebanon. This escalation has caused widespread concern, especially among Lebanese citizens who fear the consequences of being caught in the crossfire in the south. Faced with the danger of the conflict spreading throughout Lebanon, a significant number of Lebanese are leaving their homes, expressing their dissatisfaction with Hezbollah's actions and the resulting unrest. This situation not only raises questions of regional security, but also emphasizes the seriousness of the crisis and of a wider conflict. What are the consequences of the reaction of Hezbollah, the architect of this situation, from the Lebanese people in Israel, and what is going on behind the scenes? We will examine the details together. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like to be informed about our content. Also, don't forget to press the hype button that appears after you like the new addition to the YouTube platform to help our content reach a wider audience. Hezbollah's Iranian-made Falak 1 rockets were fired at a football pitch in the Golan Heights, killing 12 civilians. Following these attacks, the Israeli Security Cabinet gave the Netanyahu government full authorization for all-out attacks against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Following this, the Israeli army mobilized and targeted Lebanon. Lebanese media reported that Israel carried out airstrikes near the South Lebanese towns of Hula and Markaba. Hula and Markaba are areas that the IDF has targeted several times over the past 9 months. The Israeli Air Force again bombarded both areas with F-35 fighter jets. Israel then continued to strike Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. Lebanese media reported that Israeli warplanes carried out airstrikes in southern Lebanon following a deadly Hezbollah rocket attack on the Druze town of Maid al-Shams. Following the attacks, Israel carried out airstrikes on Hula and Markaba, while some reports claimed that the attacks were carried out in Burj al-Shamali, about 3 kilometers from Tyre. Social media users shared images of Israeli airstrikes showing the destruction of the Hezbollah's military resources and weapons depots. As the war cries echoed loudly in the Israeli government, the Lebanese government and its citizens began to worry that Hezbollah was drawing hatred of Israel into the country. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, authorized by Netanyahu, has spoken of plans for more extensive attacks on Lebanon, including limited strikes on infrastructure, striking Hezbollah weapons depots or targeting Hezbollah commanders. During a visit to the area near the Golan where Hezbollah has been launching rocket attacks, Israeli Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi promised the pro-Iranian group harsh retaliation. Lebanese citizens have become very concerned about Hezbollah's behavior towards Israel and have expressed their displeasure at Hezbollah's heavy deployment in the south of the country. The constant shelling of Lebanon's border lines has sharpened the attitude of the country's citizens towards Hezbollah. Due to Hezbollah's attacks on northern Israel and the situation in the Golan, the Lebanese anticipated that IDF airstrikes would again reach Beirut. Lebanese citizens have stated that they do not want the Hezbollah group, whose presence in the Litani River is banned by UN resolution, in their country. The Lebanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been in diplomatic dialogue with Israel to get Hezbollah to withdraw to the other side of the Litani River. Lebanon has been facing a severe economic crisis since October 2019, and its economy has been severely affected by pro-Iranian groups such as Hezbollah. The country's unstable fixed exchange rate, large external and fiscal deficits, and mounting losses in the banking sector have led to a sharp reduction in capital inflows. In March 2020, Lebanon defaulted on its sovereign debt, the first sovereign default in its history. The Lebanese government has been in negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, IMF, since May 2020 for a bailout package to help halt the deterioration in its macroeconomic outlook. An initial staff-level agreement, SLA, was signed between Lebanon and the IMF in April 2022 for an extended 4-year financing facility to restructure the financial sector, implement financial reforms, and strengthen governance. However, progress in implementing the actions required by the 2022 agreement has been extremely slow, with some measures, such as the introduction of the banking secrecy law in July 2022, running counter to the objectives and requirements of the necessary reform. The IMF warned that continued inaction and weak will to reform could lead to a never-ending crisis. The Lebanese authorities sabotaged any progress towards the IMF program by introducing illusory reforms, such as the introduction of key measures such as the competition and public procurement laws. Some politicians have even openly stated that the country can solve its own problems and does not need the IMF or any foreign organization. Resistance to the IMF stems from the fragmentation of the Lebanese parliament, where 17 political parties hold seats, but 12 of them hold 5 or fewer seats. Members from these regions do not support the IMF agreement for 2 main reasons. First, political elites have formed cartels or exercise market power in every major sector of the Lebanese economy. Second, these reforms require greater transparency and accountability, which will likely expose the corruption of the Lebanese political class. By postponing IMF solutions indefinitely, Lebanese politics is trying to choose the most favorable response for the ruling class, in the hope that the waiting game will give them enough time to access future resources, such as natural gas revenues. Transparency and accountability are also not a favored option for Lebanese politicians. The Lebanese people see the government, like Hezbollah, as a divisive force and believe that the Lebanese government is only harming the country. The Lebanese government's strategy aligned with Hezbollah has led the country into a quagmire, and the delay of IMF policies has increased the overall cost to the country. Net financial losses in the financial and public sectors have increased from $44 billion to over $72 billion, and the Lebanese lira has depreciated by 98%, leading to an increasing dollarization of the economy. The burden on the population has increased, with 70% of the population unable to meet their basic needs and multidimensional poverty rates doubling from pre-crisis levels. A recent survey revealed that 78% of Lebanese households are unable to keep their homes warm, and some cancer treatments are completely unavailable. This has led to a decline in confidence in the government, and the international community has become increasingly pessimistic about the ability of the local political class to find solutions to Lebanon's problems. Other governments, facing financial and economic crises, have often signed IMF agreements and quickly started to implement their provisions, such as Sri Lanka, Cyprus, Serbia, and Iceland. However, political resistance in Lebanon has made it almost impossible to implement the priority actions listed in the SLA agreement and move to a full program under the IMF. The government has a long way to go on fiscal and debt restructuring, exchange rate unification, and the implementation of sound banking legislation. Good governance and development, as well as a reform-minded president, prime minister, and cabinet, are needed for Lebanon to achieve real reform. Because of Hezbollah, the Lebanese government is unlikely to meet international criteria. The pro-Iranian armed group can successfully play both cards. Iranian aid, seen as Hezbollah's lifeblood, and underground tunnel networks, seen as a deterrent to intimidate Israel and the West. Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, has been a major force in Lebanon's political landscape since its creation in 1975 during the Lebanese Civil War. The group emerged out of discontent with the large and armed Palestinian presence in the country and gained strength with the arrival of Palestinian refugees. The conflict between Israel and Lebanon escalated, with Israeli forces invading southern Lebanon in 1978 and 1982 to expel Palestinian guerrilla fighters who used the area as a base from which to attack Israel. Hezbollah became a vital asset for Iran, bridging the Arab-Persian divide. It presented itself as a resistance movement and sanctified its ideology in a 1985 manifesto that promised to expel Western powers from Lebanon, called for the destruction of the State of Israel, and pledged allegiance to Iran's religious leader. It also advocated an Iranian-inspired regime, emphasizing the freedom of self-determination of the Lebanese people. Leader Hassan Nasrallah, who took over as Secretary General after Israel killed Abbas al-Musawi, one of the group's founders and former leader, in 1992, heads the 7-member Shura Council and 5 sub-councils. Hezbollah controls most of Lebanon, including Beirut, southern Lebanon, and the eastern Bekaa Valley. The group's effectiveness is dependent on foreign aid. Iran, which provides much of its training, weapons, and financing, sends it hundreds of millions of dollars each year. It also receives support from the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria, legitimate business interests, international criminal organizations, and the Lebanese diaspora. Hezbollah has been a fixture in the Lebanese government since 1992 and has served in the cabinet since 2005. In the last national elections in 2022, the party won 13 seats in Lebanon's 128-member parliament. The party manages a vast network of social services, including infrastructure, health facilities, schools, and youth programs, which has helped it win the support of Lebanese. Critics argue that Hezbollah's presence violates UN Security Council Resolution 1559, which calls for the disbandment and disarmament of all Lebanese militias. The UN force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, remains in the country, and part of its mandate is to encourage Hezbollah to disarm. In October 2019, Hezbollah became the target of mass protests over government mismanagement and slow growth, leaving Lebanon with one of the world's highest public debt burdens. The formation of a Hezbollah-backed government in January 2020 failed to appease anti-establishment protesters and led to rising unemployment, poverty, and debt. In August 2020, a UN-backed court found Hezbollah-linked Salim Jamil Ayyash guilty of the 2005 assassination of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. Acquitted, Ayyash and 3 other surviving defendants were tried in absentia, and Hezbollah refused to hand them over to the court. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is rooted in long-standing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Hezbollah, a Shia militant group backed by Iran, has long positioned itself as a resistance force against Israel. However, its recent attacks on the Golan Heights have provoked a harsh military response from Israel. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, used advanced military assets to target key Hezbollah positions, focusing on reducing the group's capabilities and deterring further aggression. The ongoing conflict has significant economic implications for Lebanon, which is currently grappling with one of the worst economic crises in its history. The conflict is disrupting trade and economic activity, potentially driving away foreign investment and tourism, which are critical sources of income for Lebanon. The country's already weakened banking sector could face further difficulties if the situation deteriorates further, leading to capital flight and increased economic instability. The psychological impact of the conflict on the Lebanese population is profound, with fear of escalating violence and uncertainty about the future forcing many Lebanese to flee their homes, particularly those in the south. This mass exodus exacerbates existing social tensions and could lead to a humanitarian crisis. Strategically, this conflict underlines the complex interplay of regional powers in the Middle East. Iran's support for Hezbollah is a key element of its strategy to project power in the region and challenge the influence of Israel in the West. The conflict in Lebanon serves as a proxy battleground for broader regional rivalries, including the Sunni-Shia divide and the geopolitical rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Diplomatically, this conflict poses a significant challenge for the international community, particularly in terms of maintaining regional stability. The risk of a wider regional war, potentially involving Iran, raises urgent concerns for global security. The international community must address the underlying causes of the conflict, including the role of external forces, in order to achieve a lasting peace. Thank you for following us.